What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with the one and done preview for the Travelers Championship. I mentioned this at the top of the DFS video, but I am on the verge of releasing a lot of really cool stuff in the pipeline here. We're talking sports betting tools, if that interests you. We're talking about things for showdown slates, just a lot more content, a lot more tools. I'm really excited about it. They're going to be on dfsondemand.com. I'll share screenshots and all that good stuff as they come out. If you'd like to win a monthly subscription to DFS On Demand and join us in the Slack channel, get access to the tools that are on the site, make sure that you like, subscribe, and comment below. Let me know who you're playing this week. That's for the video version. If you're listening on a podcast, give it a 5-star review, leave a comment. I'll pick some winners for next week, and we'll get you guys set up. It's been a lot of fun, and I want to share it with you. So go ahead and do that. Before we look at the Travelers Championship, let's look back at last week's U.S. Open, which was awesome, by the way. I mean, just loved every single thing about it. The top 5 highest owned golfers in the Gups Corner one and done. Tiger Woods coming in with a whopping 500 picks, or 503 to be exact, which was a little bit surprising to me. You know, Tiger's always going to be popular. Didn't necessarily think the U.S. Open was the place where he was going to garner as many picks as he did. The next two are really no surprise. So Dustin Johnson at 442. I think I kind of mentioned this a few weeks ago. Maybe it was at the RBC Canadian or the week before, where we expected if you hadn't used Dustin yet, you were probably saving him for the U.S. Open, and a lot of guys ended up going that route. And then Brooks at 263, pretty significant drop off from the top two guys. You know, nearly twice as many people picked DJ as they did Brooks. And then Cantlay and Jason Day rounded out the top 5. So how did you do if you had one of those guys? You know, the winner, Gary Woodland, I believe 9 people had him. So if you were one of the 9 that picked Gary Woodland in your one and done, he was actually the thumbnail for last week on YouTube. I could not use him because I already used him. Would have loved to, and 9 guys found a way to get him into the lineup and take it down for whatever it was, 2 point whatever million at the U.S. Open. So congrats to them. Big win and big move up the leaderboard. If you took Brooks, if you were one of the top guys, or one of the guys who took Brooks, he ended up getting, what, 1.2 million for his second place finish. The prize pool is so large, even a second place at the U.S. Open is almost like a win in a lot of these smaller tournaments. Adam Scott returned you a T7, so a top 10. It was a couple $100,000. I think it was 300, and I'll show you in a second. So you'd be fine with that, using Adam Scott and getting a few $100,000 in return. But if you had any of the other popular guys, Tiger coming in T21, it's fine, doesn't really move the needle. Can't lay in the same spot. And then DJ, a pretty big disappointment. T35 is nothing to scoff at in any U.S. Open. However, when you are, the most popular guy on DraftKings, one of the best players in the world, that's just not going to cut it. If you went out and spent DJ and only got, I don't even know what he ended up making, $50,000, something like that, wasn't worth it, unfortunately. I had Adam Scott and Jason Day, so I did knock a top 10. I had a top 25, which puts me, let's see here. So Adam Scott got 367. And Jason Day got 117. So it's been a pretty good run for us in this in our weekly pick. So that's the one that I choose every week here on the show with you. It started out absolutely horribly. We were in the bottom 10%, quite honestly, for a while. But we got 200,000 from Spieth at the Charles Schwab, 1.6 million from Cantlay at the Memorial, 300,000 from Kuchar at the Canadian Open, and then 367 from Adam Scott at the U.S. Open. So really, really good run for us to get back to, basically what is the middle of the pack. And I'll show you where we stand in the segment in a second. And then our season-long lineup, still hovering, it's probably top 40% or so. It's a little bit better than our weekly lineup. And if we look at, I think I have it here. Yeah, here's segment 3. So our weekly lineup, which this is segment three, so it runs from the Byron Nelson to the Rocket Mortgage Classic. So we have 2 tournaments left. Our weekly lineup is in 468th, which is nice. That's top like 12-ish% of this. So, if we can find a couple winners, maybe a winner at the Travelers, maybe a winner at the Rocket Mortgage, we can get up. I don't know how close we can get to the win, but we can probably break into the top 50, maybe top 25 if everything goes absolutely right. But nice to see that we're on a pretty good stretch of picks here. So where are we going to go for this week? I do want to look at the one and done tool real quick because one, I think it's incredibly valuable, and we're getting to the point of the season where there's just not a lot of guys left, right? You've probably used a lot of these guys. Now the Travelers field is pretty deep, so you might have some players left here. And for, my expected value, there are really 3 guys that lead the way here, and then it's a pretty significant drop off. So Justin Thomas has the highest expected value, followed by Jordan Spieth and Jason Day. Makes a lot of sense there. And then there's a drop to Phil Mickelson, who's kind of in his own tier, and then a drop to DeChambeau, Bubba, and Koepka. Kind of surprising to see Koepka as low as he is, but quite frankly, I think he's played the Travelers just a handful of times, hasn't won it basically. So when you're Brooks Koepka and you haven't won a golf tournament, your expected value relative to guys that have kind of comes down when you factor into the course history. So interesting to see him come into this, 5th or 6th on my list, but I'll be focusing, if you have them available, I'd be focusing, I think Justin Thomas is pretty interesting because he burns a lot of guys last week. If you haven't used him yet, might be a good spot to get him. He's one of the betting favorites. Jason Day as well. I think he's a guy who could go pretty low owned because so many people played him last week. Now, where am I going to go? Let me flip over to the cheat sheet here for a second. And my problem is I'm kind of running out of guys. So talked about this on the DFS video. I think Cantlay is in a really, really good spot. I've played him, I believe, in both lineups. Or I've played him in my weekly lineup, which is the only one I can really have any flexibility with. I wouldn't mind Jason Day, or I'm sorry, I wouldn't mind Jason Day, but I wouldn't mind Justin Thomas and try to go against the grain a little bit and see if he can just get right. His strokes gain numbers, I think, are a little bit of an outlier right now. I think he's going to get right here very quickly. I assume a lot of people are going to go with Bubba, quite honestly, even though he hasn't been playing well. I think when people look at tournament history and see that he has won at TPC River Highlands twice, he's got 2 more top 5s outside of that. I just think it's going to be too enticing to go out and use him here the week after a major, but we'll see. So where I'm going to go, my weekly pick is going to be Paul Casey, who really, really loved him last week. He's a guy that off the tee hits it really long, hits it really straight. This is a short course. TPC River Highlands, the second shortest course on the PGA Tour rotation, and it tends to turn into a little bit of a wedge contest, right? Guys who can just throw darts. They're all kind of hitting from the same spot. And if that's the situation, I think Paul Casey fits the mold. And you can see he has competed here in the past. Second place last year, second place in 2015, 5th place 2 years ago. Hasn't done worse than 17th in each of his last 4 years. And played kind of sneaky well at the U.S. Open, was pretty quiet, but ended up finishing 21st. Never really made a ton of noise that I think a lot of people are going to say, oh my gosh, I'm going to go play Paul Casey in my one and done. There's enough guys here. I think it's certainly plausible that you go out and play a lot of other guys, quite frankly. So I'll go with Paul Casey in my weekly. In my season long, of course, who I have lined up here is Bubba Watson. I really don't know how to feel about this one. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that's great. Like, I'm so stoked. I picked before the year and now this guy's converging. Certainly don't feel that way. I understand why he got into my season-long model for this spot here. It's because of the course history, but playing pretty poorly. I mean, I wouldn't, and I didn't pick him for my weekly lineup. So I really don't know how to feel about this. I'm pretty conflicted. If he can get the putter right, if he can get his around the green game going, I think that's fine because he's always going to be elite off the tee, but he's played pretty uninspiring the last handful of weeks. I'm hoping that maybe a trip back to somewhere that he's had a ton of success in his career gets him right, but I guess we'll find out. So let me know what you think, who you're playing this week. Tweet me. It's at DFS On Demand, or leave a comment below to get into the draw for a monthly subscription to DFS On Demand. And I will talk to you guys soon. Good luck.